When I was in my early 20s, I was a total self-help junkie. I was reading book after book, consuming podcasts after podcast. I was chasing something. I didn't know what. Now, it wasn't until January of 2018 when I really understood why my life was not in alignment with the knowledge that I've obtained. I'd read all these books, many of them several times, listened to these great thinkers, had all this intellectual understanding of how I should live my life. But my life wasn't in alignment with it. And it wasn't until I really started reading depth psychology, analytical psychology, that I understood why. See, I had set and fallen into 5 traps that I see in the self-help world. Now, I was fortunate to trick those traps, come out on the other side, and I want to share my experience as to how I was able to find this sense of freedom, prosperity, abundance, interconnectedness that I move with on a daily basis today. Now, I'm making this video because I want to share my experience with self-improvement to make sure that you don't fall into these same self-help traps that I found myself in. I'm going to break down these 5 traps. We're going to walk through them, how they function, and then I'm going to offer you the alternative, what to do instead. What are the tools, what are the practices, the frameworks that I adopted that allowed me to get out of these traps? So the first trap of self-help is understanding that the pursuit of self-help may actually be about control. See, we live in a world that is so vast. We are constantly at the intersection of so many systems and interplays and influences of people and ideologies and institutions, and it's a very chaotic world in existence. And we have these very old brains that want to latch onto things. They want to attain certainty and control and safety. If you're not careful, that need for safety can get latched onto your pursuit of knowledge or your pursuit of self-development, personal growth. If I can just get over this hump, get this piece of information that will allow me to finally do or feel XYZ, then I'll be okay. Then I'm safe. So it may be about control. It may not be about the knowledge, the pursuit of the knowledge. It may be about a sense of safety. And now, why is this a problem? Because I don't know about you, but I would rather my sense of safety to come internally with my relationship with myself and my relationship with the world. I don't want to rely on something outside of myself to feel safe, to feel secure. The second self-help trap is understanding that you may be chasing a feeling of hope. Kind of similar to the first one, but it has a different flavor. See, I understood that I was consuming all this content for a reason. There was a function that was in my behavior, right? We don't do things by accident. There's always a function there. And what I was chasing was the feeling that was elicited by consuming this content, by reading these books. And what was that feeling? The feeling was hope. There's nothing wrong with hope. We're feeling hopeful. But once again, really developing an understanding of my motivations. Do I need to consume this content just to feel hopeful, just to feel good about my future, to feel connected to what's possible for me? The reality is I don't. And if I was approaching that behavior without this awareness, I wouldn't realize that there's a better way to attain hope, to feel hopeful, to feel connected to our future and what's possible for us. Now, the third self-help trap is in its approach. Very often, self-help is very cognitive based. It's very thinking based. It's very mental. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it may be limiting, because if you have a framework, or if you're approaching life from strictly this cognitive space, boy, are you doing yourself a disservice. And why? The why is an understanding that that approach is absent of the unconscious. It's absent of our body, our animal body, these older parts of our brain. Man, the unconscious is way more powerful than you realize. The unconscious dictates way more of your thinking and your behavior and your choices than you may give it credit for. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So we need an approach that is not only inclusive of our cognition, of our thinking, of logos, our rationale. The approach also needs to be inclusive of the unconscious, of our soma, of our body, right? Our trauma exists in our body. We know this. Science has proven this. So be careful you don't fall into the trap in thinking that it's all mental. It's all thinking. Understand the body, the unconscious, our animal body. These things have a say. They make themselves heard on a daily basis. Now, your job is to learn how to translate that, because it doesn't communicate in the same way that our mind does. And we're going to talk about that. Self-help trap number 4 is in thinking that knowledge changes you. Knowledge does not change you. Experience does. Joseph Campbell said, "I don't believe people are searching for the meaning of life as much as they're searching for the experience of being alive. Knowledge is not the catalyst for change. What knowledge does is it puts you in a position, based off of this new awareness, to receive experience. Now that experience is what changes you. Self-help trap number 5 is pretty straightforward. It is an understanding that consuming self-help content gives you a false sense of productivity. Feels good, feels like you're getting something done, you're growing, you're moving in the direction you want to go. This false sense of productivity is curated through consuming self-help and personal development content. Okay, so what to do instead? So we're going to take a look at each one of these 5 self-help traps, and I'm going to offer you the specific tools, the specific frameworks, and the specific adjustments that I made that allowed me to climb out of this trap that I had set and found myself in, and find true freedom outside of the world of self-help and needing to consume content consistently. The first piece, which is really simple, is understanding that uncertainty is inescapable. It's not going anywhere. You have to accept the dynamic nature of life and that things are going to constantly shift. And instead, it's our responsibility to sort of surf the waves, the shifts of how life reveals itself, because there is no certainty. Get your relationship right with uncertainty. The next step, most important step, is you have to build rock solid proof and evidence that you were able to take care of yourself. So in this world that is so vast and confusing, complicated, chaotic, our ultimate fear is that we can't take care of ourselves and that ultimately we will perish. So if you build evidence of your ability to really provide for yourself, build habits of self-dependence, then you're building evidence that you're actually capable, that in the face of this uncertainty, when things pop up, you can manage. You have the tools right here on your utility belt. You can bust them out and make adjustments and manage life and whatever life's curveballs throw at you, okay? So the third piece to changing our relationship to uncertainty is, when all else fails, being willing to ask for help. You have to have the humility and the confidence, really the courage to ask for help, and understanding that we are designed as humans to live together, to live interdependently, not independently, but interdependently. When all else fails, it's okay to lean on the people around you in these moments of uncertainty. Ask for help. Lean into those relationships. Self-help as a means to find some illusion of control. What to do instead? Shift your relationship to uncertainty. Those are the 3 best tools that I've used to allow myself to create a bulletproof relationship to uncertainty. Truly. By the way, one quick thing, if you don't know me, my name is Brian Maierhofer. I'm a men's coach and an associate marriage family therapist. I primarily work with men. I help men reclaim their fire, draw their sword, and get back in the arena of life. For everyone not in that category, I'm just looking to provide as much free value as possible. If you feel like this is a journey worthy of embracing, something that you feel connected to, go ahead and give me a subscribe, and I appreciate all the support on this newfound journey. And looking at self-help trap number 2, where you're chasing the feeling of hope, what to do instead? What do we need to understand? How do we approach this? The first thing that needs to be understood, you are most likely addicted to fantasy. Fantasy is normally the very first solution, the first tool that we use as kids to disconnect from the present moment. When the present moment is too overwhelming, too intense, too scary, we need to disassociate, disconnect a little bit. We turn to fantasy. We also live in a culture in which we are encouraged to compare ourselves to other people, to fantastical, idealist, perfection ideas that are curated and pumped down our throats by mass media and big corp. When you get on social media, Instagram, etc., it's a culture of fantasy. We live in a culture of fantasy. We live in a culture of facade. We live in this culture of idealized persona, presentation, the mask that we wear. Take a look at your relationship to fantasy. Understand that fantasy is used as a means to disconnect from reality, from the truth and who we really are. So let reality be your master. Let reality be your God. All right, self-help trap number 3, in that the approach, the framework is strictly cognitive, very often leans heavily cognitive. What to do instead? Adopt therapeutic practices that are somatic in nature. The goal is to connect more to the unconscious, connect more to the body, lean on the intelligence of the body, the wisdom of the unconscious as it presents itself, and adopt a framework that is inclusive of not only our thinking, our cognition, our logos, our rational thought, but also eros as well, also the unconscious, our body, our soma. So I'm going to put a link to some literature, to some wonderful somatic practices, somatic experiencing. You can sort of begin to understand how somatic therapy works, but I want to offer you just a few tools that you can take with you. The first and most important tool when approaching the body and building a deeper relationship with the body is breath. So once again, I'll put a link, I'll put some breath work down there. There's going to be breath. Adopting mindfulness practices that allow you to have more of a sensory experience. If somebody's an overthinker, they spend too much time in their mind. If this problem is in the mind, then the solution very often exists in the body. So developing mindfulness practices, heightening our sensory experience. These are things that are going to put us in our body. There's also a lot of really cool approaches. Dream work. I studied dream work for a long time. Narrative therapy, mythic therapy, existential work, things that maybe hit a little bit deeper than a simple cognitive approach. These are going to be fantastic ways to build a framework that is inclusive of the body, of the unconscious, and also the mind as well. Okay, self-help trap number 4, in understanding that knowledge does not change you, but experience does. To really understand this, I want to take a look at even just the term self-help or the term personal development. What do those two things have in common? Self, personal. This pursuit of self-help, this pursuit of knowledge, it's so individualistic. And that's why it doesn't change you, because you're on an island. What changes you? Experience, relational experience, to be specific. Our culture is so far away from this communal manner of living, which we lived in for so long, and we have a heightened sense of individualism. To approach community as a means for growth and experience, this is what's going to change you. This is where you can apply info in a manner in which the actual primary focus, what's on the table, is real growth, real experience. How do we do that? How do we create experience in relationship? Well, you lean in with greater authenticity, greater vulnerability, greater boundaries, greater confrontational skills, greater ability to communicate, express yourself, to remain connected and intimate with a friend, a family member, a lover, while simultaneously a differentiated person. These are the things, these are the practices that we need to develop relationally that actually curate experience that allow us to grow into who it is that we are supposed to be on this planet. Okay, so the 5th self-help trap was understanding that it gives you a false sense of productivity. Now, what to do instead? Well, what you want to do instead is you want to take slow, consistent daily action, learn to trust your instincts, and build a rock-solid philosophy that does not require you to consume self-help content. This is what I'm going to be doing on this channel. I'm going to be sharing my experience of how I went through this process, how I developed this philosophy. This is what I'm going to be teaching you, my experience that I've had over the last 5 years, in a manner in which you can adopt some of these tools and these practices, apply them to your life, and live in a manner in which you feel connected, joyful, prosperous, vital in your energy, and loving. If this interests you, if you want to come along for the journey, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Maybe check out my podcast, some of my other work. I'm super stoked that you're here. Welcome to Liminal Means.